So, welcome everyone. I'm so glad to see you. I bring you greetings from Amsterdam and hope you're doing well wherever you are in the world. Um, I had this grand plan for this wonderful introduction to our series this year on maturity, and then all kinds of immature things started happening in the country that many of you live in, that I used to live in. And um, And I just thought, how could I speak to something in that kind of context? And is that what people really need? I decided no. Um, and so we're going to do something a little bit different than I had originally planned to try to rise to the occasion that we're in. Um, and it'll be similar to what we'll do going forward, but we'll have more focus for these. These are going to be more of you finding yourself and where you are. Um, One of the sort of anomalies of my strange brain is that I really am attracted to the essence of things. And I'm not very good with institutions. I'm not very good with rules or norms. I always try to find what feels most true and how can I go in that direction. So where the BCE came from, just for those of you who are new, is because I've lived my entire coaching career outside of coaching. I only come back in to go talk or write or think, but I want to free us to be better humans. And I'm not as interested in words that go with what that's described as. And so these BCEs are just our chance once a month to get together as a community of people, many of whom are on similar journeys of their own flavor, just be together and say that regardless of what happens around us, nobody can take this space from us. And we can make this be what we need it to be for ourselves. Um, and everything is in this sort of context of expanding our notion of what coaching is, and maybe even being willing to step outside of that frame to imagine how else we might want to work with people and be with people. Um, and so as we kick off the year, we have our ever so wonderful Karen Weatherford, who's been my faithful sidekick in this for quite some time. So I was grateful for Karen's presence, and yours as well. So just to kind of get us started, I'd like you just to put in the chat box where you're calling from and what is one thing you're curious about right now that perhaps inspired you to come? What are you bringing with you as you come today? And I'm going to open up the chat box. I'm going to invite you to do the same so we can watch everybody's wisdom scroll right by. So where are you from and what are you bringing with you that brought you here to this? Hmm. 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 I'm sure. Hmm. 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 Imola, wow. The very first cohort. Wow. I recognized your name, but yeah, wow. Hmm.
Mila, I love Year of the Snakes feels like a big molting of identity, sliding my way through it. That's
Yeah.
perfectly said.
Hmm. All right. All right. Wonderful. Um, so one of the things that when we're faced with adversity or challenge or something that we're not liking is trying to figure out how we would like to respond. And I go through these motions every day where sometimes I feel like I need to change everything, and sometimes I realize I need to change nothing. Um, and um, and so part of the where I'd like to start this year about maturity, because maturity is in some ways all about discernment. And I was talking to a colleague of earlier today, and we were reflecting on. I was telling them about the first and only time in my life I ever got fired. I was all of 20 something. And I was, when I moved here to Amsterdam, I was going through old letters and I found I'd saved his letter he wrote to me when he was really pissed off. And and I read it as if I was back at 25 or 6 or whatever I was. And I could feel again the just the outrage and the and how horrified I was and I felt at the time. And now reading it 40 years later, I thought, wow, what an amazing letter he gave me. And yeah, it was harsh. Yeah, I probably could have fixed some of his language. And I thought, thank God he gave me that letter because then I was very clear I was in the wrong career. And if he had been more kind or thoughtful or considerate, I might have thought, well, maybe it was just the wrong opportunity. I'll try another one. But after that, I thought, no, he stated the obvious that I could not see about myself. That I had invested a master's degree and a lot of moves and choices to start this career, and it was a choice that I would not sustain. And so we got this thinking about maturity. Part of maturity is being willing to let things ripen so we start to see them in ways that maybe we didn't see them the first time. And how often so much in our life, it just sort of like this keeps rotating around us. And every time it comes by as a memory, go, huh, didn't see that before. And so I feel like part of what I'm hoping that tonight will offer us is to remember to exhale when we feel stressed by times like this. We just suck a lot of air in, and because we can't believe, and we don't want to. Yeah, and so I'm hoping that you'll allow yourself to relax and exhale, and just discern what is it you. Just the classic narrative coaching question: what do you need most right now today? Tomorrow you might need something else. So we're going to help you find your way to that question. Um, Is there anything that anybody else would like to share or ask before we begin? Otherwise, we'll move right into a little meditation. Anything that feels important to you to share.
David, I'll share something. That's okay.
I'm gonna match a voice with the,
It's Alex.
there you are. Okay, there you go.
And if everybody could mute yourself, and then we can hear Alex very clearly. Thank you so much.
Your reading of the letter corresponded well with me also reading a letter that I had wrote almost a decade ago last night. We're in the process of moving, not too far. We're moving down to Salt Lake City. And I was in a relationship at the time that I was sure this was the one. We had known each other since we were little kids, and we had this fairy tale, uh, albeit pretend, sort of
Mm,
uh, childlike love and bond. And I was cleaning out a drawer and I came across a notebook full of letters that I had written her after we had broken up. And the last one in particular struck me because it was actually a letter that I sent to her, but when I read it, it wasn't to her at all. It was to me.
mm,
It was so interesting. I was reading
mm,
this uh, old version of myself, giving myself permission to go out into the world and to be brave and figure out who I was. And, um, that led me to moving across the country and, leaning into coaching. And uh, I just really, I couldn't help but share that because I had a very similar experience last
Mm,
night that really, looking back on it 10 years later, it just filled me full of like warmth and awe and wonder. And so it was cool to see myself in that place today and give myself
mm,
that permission so long ago.
wonderful. Thank you. Yeah. So again, another hallmark of maturity is the flexibility to change perspective. So here's what I would like you to do. So Karen, if in a couple of minutes, if we could have some breakout rooms for, let's just say 30 minutes, give people a nice luxurious amount of time. And what I would like you to do in the beginning of your group is just have a moment or two of silence, just to allow yourself to arrive. You're physically sitting here, but your psyche, your soul, your attention might be other places. I see my Mila looking over, right? Who's thinking very deeply about something. She said, yes. Just quiet yourself for a couple minutes and just sort of center yourself. Take a few deep breaths with a little bit of a focus on exhaling. Um, and then I see Marion. I'm hoping all you're faring well at the hospital. Thank you for coming to join us. Um, good. Um, and then I would like you to take turns. So each of you will have about 7 or 8 minutes, and I'd like you to pick one of your colleagues in your group to just ask you one question, which is, how are you? I'd like you to answer that question. I'd like you then to wait a little bit and be asked that question again. And before you answer it a second time, just exhale again and ask it and check in and see, how am I? And we'll just do this for until you feel complete, but allow yourself to just be taken on a journey because there's parts of you that actually know how you are, that other parts of you might not want to notice. And as with everything we do in the BCE, I tried this on myself a couple of days ago, and it was quite revelatory about some things I immediately stopped doing because I really didn't want to do it at all in the end. So we'll give you 7 or 8 minutes just to be asked that one question by one person. Take a pause, switch roles. Somebody else asks, somebody else receives. And the whole piece is just imagining that you're like in a warm pool and you're just like floating and maybe even descending a bit, but you're just relaxing into a simple question. How am I? And part of maturity is to be able to allow yourself to descend, not defend, and to create the structure you need for yourself to feel safe to surrender and descend. The good news is you'll have people in your room who will help you with this. And then when we come back in about 30 minutes, we'll see where you ended up, but how you are and what feels important to you about that. Okay?
Okay, and AT, I got your message, so I understand. Feel free to just listen. AT can't participate, but if
Okay.
AT's in your room, AT will be
Ah,
listening. Okay,
okay. Great.
all right.
Enjoy.
Or 4 hours from where we live.
Hmm. All right. So welcome back. Um, and I'm just going to invite us to sort of ease back into the conversation. If you'd like to put something in the chat box that stood out for you from your experience, please do. If you'd like to speak to that, some people find that easier and more meaningful, then feel free just to raise your hand and check in about your experience. Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
I'd like to share, David.
Okay, Colleen and Sherry, did you have your hand up as well?
I'll go after Colleen.
Okay, great. I just
Okay,
wanted to check.
thanks.
The hand was like wanting to come up, but I didn't want to. Yeah.
We
Just go
just
ahead.
happened to be in the same room as well.
Oh, there you go.
It was interesting through the course of going through the rounds of the how are you, that when we got into the second round of that, more and more we felt more comfortable in the sharing, but went deeper in the sharing as well. And once the word human was brought up and humanness was brought up, I could
Hmm.
see a thread through everything that we had been sharing together.
Hmm.
And the humanness really resonated for me and became a focal point because it is something that I endeavor
Hmm.
with supporting individuals in any dialogic fashion to maybe see things from their perspective that we are all human beings.
Hmm. Yeah. So one of the premises for the activity was when my observation is when our environment is unusually charged, we get a lot more data coming in than we're aware of, and data we're not used to having to deal with. And so so one of the practices that we'll be doing various versions of across the year is learning how to access how am I now often during the day, because that's going to change more frequently than it would under normal circumstances. Um, and so that we can be aware of that while it's arising, not long after it's happened, in which case we've had a bad day or ended up being really grumpy or doing things that we're not even conscious we're doing because we're not aware that we've been affected. So yeah. And Sherry, you wanted to share as well.
Yeah, so I appreciated a couple things. The opportunity to sit in the discomfort of
Mm,
the discomfort of just actually not knowing how I'm feeling in that moment, other than being able to, fine, thank you, or a little bit busy, whatever you quickly say normally. And also to drop it deeper than, well, because this is happening and that's happening, the whole
mm,
context and narrative around that. And so
mm,
I appreciate that. Again, it's practice, which I know is what you're wanting us to do. And also this space, and I I have a feeling everybody feels this way, as we have a lot of things we're doing in the world and wanting to be maturing ourselves and also influencing out there. And it's really, really draining on the nervous system. So being here and just sitting for 30 minutes with three other generous people,
mm,
refill. So thank you again, always, for the
mm.
opportunity, David.
Yeah, you're most welcome. Mm. When I was to your point, Sherry, when I was in college, one of my classes was social psychology, and so they had us do design little mini experiments. And one of mine, the dorm I was staying in was uh, down the hill a bit, and the classroom was quite a ways up, so you had to go up all these stairs every day to get to classes. So my experiment was I would people, hey Dave, good to see you. How are you? Oh, really badly. But I said really badly with a really sort of upbeat tone of voice. And not one person, the entire like 10 minutes walking up to the class, stopped and said, "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that." Or even like they all said, "Great, see you later." Because all they were really listening to was the tone of my voice. They didn't listen to the words, so then I thought, surely somebody will get this. So I started exaggerating I think I even might have said I feel suicidal at some point. Again, nobody was tracking that at all. And I feel like, again, we're in a time when it's easy to want to tune out and it all gets to be a bit too much. And so part of it again is over the course of the year, I want to really focus the maturity piece on just much more aware of the ebb and flow of ourselves and how we are and what we're actually feeling in any moment in time, what we're actually needing in any moment in time. I think one of the gifts of this time will become much more familiar with our own instinctive nature. Yeah. Yeah, Imola.
That is so interesting that you said that the instinctive nature, because that came up at the second, how are you, for me. But it was also a very interesting experience. And those 30 minutes seemed like that they have passed like 2 minutes, 5 minutes, let's say 5 minutes. And it was, so I went into the room with totally, completely different emotions than the moment we greeted each other. That changed,
Wow.
and it is a word that was used by Stephanie in the conversations, that it was all very generative,
Mm.
And quite a lot came up for all of us. And we also had the very interesting experience that one of us was only present through chat and camera off. And the way we have integrated that also very seamlessly, and that it was all beautifully connected.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to share anything?
I'd like to ask, I can't figure out where the hand raising is now. But when you brought up the data coming in and sometimes there's too much, could you talk more about that? Sometimes I get like this gray tweed material pattern in my brain, like the old TV tuned out
Oh, yeah.
screen. And when you said that for me, I'm realizing it's not just words that people are saying that's the data, that there's other things. So wanted to hear more.
Well, a lot of our day is fairly transactional. We go to the store, we go shopping, we check out, we have phone calls, we might have coaching sessions, we might talk to a neighbor. And so it's a series of, relatively chosen encounters to varying degrees. But the sort of larger tone at the moment, there's all kinds of really dark energies around us. It's like trying to now move through the day as if the air is now made out of molasses. And so, and even if we're not directly affected by that, you can feel it in the air. Even here in Europe, it's not the same. And then you get emails from friends who lost most of their clients, or just things. And so there's a lot of things we wouldn't even think of tracking because it never was an issue. Like, so, if you're out driving and somebody cuts you off, you have a few moments where you go, you might say something or, oh, what was that, right? But then you kind of move on. You go back to driving and you don't even think about them again. But you can't not think about it. Like, the grammar gets confusing, but you can't avoid thinking about a lot of what's happening because it's so significant and so completely game changing in ways we can't even imagine and predict. And so there's not only is there a lot of just really not good things happening every day, but we don't know where it's heading and where will all end up. And so there's a lot of energies that don't have a place to go. And so we feel them, even if we shut off the news, they're still in the ether, right? And so I think as we get points where we feel like we want to do something, um, just noticing like energy do I have around that and what makes sense? Like, so what I have a small practice I've done every day since the election where I try to pick up litter in a small part of wherever I am. Why? It makes no difference in the overall scale of litter in the city. But I think for that little bit of time, that few little area is clean. And it makes me feel like for that little bit of time, I made the world a better place. And that may be the only time that day I feel that way. And so it just gives me, oh, yes, this is how it feels to help. This is how it feels like to make a little difference. And then, so then I've started now to explore, which, is there any way I can expand on that? Just because it allows that part of myself to come out. And then the day doesn't feel so gray anymore. Yeah. And so I think, um, many of us took careers to try to make the world a better place in a whole host of forms. I know you did a lot of time in the military, right? So everybody's doing things that they believe in and they feel like this will be helpful. And so we're entering into a very different period of human history than the one that some of us grew up in. And, and so we're not prepared for this. I mean, you are if you go talk to the Germans, but most of us as Americans are not prepared for this. And so we're now having to deal with this in real time and prepare ourselves for what does this mean for me now? What does this mean for my neighborhood, my country now? And I don't know what it means. I have no control over that. No, but um, and without going too far down this whole rabbit hole, but is we're going to be so part of learning new things is learning how to trust yourself, going back to our instincts, learning how to be more aware of our state more frequently. How am I doing? Um, and more willing to do what it takes to care for ourselves. Um, so, um, yeah, those are some of my thoughts. How does that sound, Sherry?
Deep, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're most welcome.
Hmm.
And Karen's reminding me that we had scheduled these for 60 minutes. But I'm in charge of the business, so I'm happy to stay for as long as you guys want to stay. Uh, it would feel sort of abrupt to, if you need to go because you planned for 60 minutes, I apologize and do well with whatever you're going to do next, but I'm happy to stay on because I actually had the other half of the meditation I'd like to do with you. So if that's all right. And I'll work out with my,
I would like to add one more thing, what you said since the
Shaman, yes,
election,
please.
what your method was. So I was having a coffee chat with another woman and we are talking about, the political state.
Mm,
What came out is that while we worry about the big rocks that we cannot change,
mhm,
we often overlook the fertile ground we have
Yeah.
just before us.
Yeah. Yep. Hmm. All right. So would you guys would like to stay on for a while? Can you stay on for a while? Okay. Excellent. I'm happy to do that. And then, well, we have another BC thing we're working on, and but things got a bit too much these last month, so we decided to postpone that part. But so this one's still at 60 minutes, but we'll work on that. So the other half of the equation that I wanted to focus on, besides how am I, is what do I need? And again, this goes back to um, the basic understanding of our human needs. And if we don't know how we're doing, we don't know what we need. And so what I'd like you to do just for a few minutes, so this won't take long, but I'd like to just sort of guide a little meditation. And I just want to say a few things in that meditation for you to reflect on as sort of the other half of the work you did in your small group. Okay. So for now, if you wouldn't mind just closing your eyes and relaxing into your chair. And as you feel into your body, maybe if you've noticed any tension, maybe from this conversation or in general, just be aware of it and let it be. Go back to your breath. And I'd like you to bring into your mind's eye wherever you ended up at the end of your group conversation. What part of how you are stands out for you now from the end of that conversation? As you bring it to your mind's eye, this is not permanent, it's just your sense right now. It just is what it is. I'd like you just to imagine that whatever that need, that whatever that sense of yourself about how you're doing, I'd like you to imagine it's sitting right in front of you. So maybe you feel fatigued, or maybe you feel curious, or whatever you end up, your sense of yourself that's coming to your mind. Imagine, like, for example, fatigue is sitting right across from you. And if whatever was there is holding up a mirror to you, I'd like you to ask yourself, what does this say about what I need most right now? Not forever, not for the next week, but right now. What am I noticing about myself in this moment in time? About how I am and what I might need to address that. And this is important because when we find things that are even mildly traumatizing to us, it often disconnects us from our instinctive self and disconnects us from our awareness of how we are. So part of, for me, the strengthening and maturing of this time is learning what we did first, which is how am I doing in this moment in time? And then the other half for right now is what does that say to me about what I need? Hmm. And so I'd like you, when you're ready, to just open your eyes and come back to the room and just sit with whatever emerged from you. And whatever emerged for you is exactly perfect. And if you feel inclined, we're not going to speak for right now, but just put whatever comes to mind for you in the chat box as sort of an offering to the group. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Go, Stephanie. Hmm. 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 Yep. Hmm. 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 All right. Does anybody wish to say anything to bring closure for themselves to the day? Or at least to this session? Anything important for you as you leave?
I just like to say that I'm noticing that I'm really enjoying seeing each of you here
Hmm.
and who you are. And that is a way to go through all of this together, separately, but together. Thank you.
Hmm.
That totally resonates with me too. And just having this space, and thank you very much, David, too, for creating this space and the experience of connecting with very like-minded people really really made a difference, and it is few until we meet next.
Yes. And if in all of this there's things that emerge you'd like us to address in one of these BCEs, just write to us. I want this to feel like we're creating this space together. We had over 100. We had to close the registration for the BCs. We had over 100 people register for this, and so as usual, only about 40% came. But it just said to me that we need to do more of this, which we're working on. So, and if there's things that you see that would be helpful to you as things emerge, just let us know, and we'll see how we can help. Yeah.
Thank you so
Otherwise,
much.
be well, and we'll see you again soon. All right.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
David.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Bye, Georgina.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.